Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to BRAP. Quick BRAP rant. I have a lot to say about what Phil Spencer said yesterday in his interview on Kind of Funny on the Xcast. Let's talk about it right now. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to BRAP again. A big shout out to everyone in the live chat. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this Friday afternoon here on the Eastern Seaboard of the United States. Maybe a little bit later in the evening for some of our friends overseas and around the world. But thank you, everyone. Please do me a favor, smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. But yeah, I wanted to talk about Phil Spencer's interview with the Xcast, Kind of Funny, yesterday. Great interview, by the way. Look, it's amazing to me that we have a gaming company that has to come out and apologize for putting out a bad game. We don't see this with Nintendo. You don't see Doug Bowser on Kind of Funny. You don't see Jim Ryan on Kind of Funny. You don't see those two gaming companies coming out and issuing apologies for releasing bad content. You just don't. This to me speaks to part of the issues that we've been talking about on BRAP for the last year or so. You've heard myself, you've heard Slow-Mo, Forte, B-Money, Eric Jackson, you've heard Game Logic, and Game Logic even more recently talking about the issues in the production or management or lack thereof of Microsoft or Xbox's production pipeline. This is an example of that Phil coming out and saying that it's on him. He apologized for the condition and the state of Redfall. He even alluded to, he hates when they miss in marketing and they don't accurately market a product accurately. Again, I'm paraphrasing what he's saying, but that to me speaks to how they marketed the Xbox Series X as a machine that eats monsters for breakfast, and that 60 FPS will be the standard by Aaron Greenberg, and then retracting that statement saying, oh, but we're not going to force the developers to put out 60 FPS. And I get that, but at least if you're going to talk about 60 FPS being a standard, or you're going to hint at it, at least offer some kind of performance mode. Then we hear Phil Spencer saying, you know what, we acquired ZeniMax Bethesda. This game was already in development. Maybe after the acquisition, we didn't reach out to Arcane Austin soon enough. Then there's the commentary of, we're not in the business of out-consoling Sony or out-consoling Nintendo. Look, I appreciate, and I've been on the Xbox platform for 22 years. I've said this on Crossfire last night. By the way, I heard Crossfire got a little crazy yesterday, but I didn't listen. I had to jump off early. I didn't listen to the rest of it. I'll have to go back and listen to it. But it was a great conversation while I was there. But I'll have to. Oh, it was a painful admission. Thank you, Lou. Let me change that, by the way. I need to, not a painful admission, but a painful admission. Lou's right. So let me just make that quick edit here. I meant to say admission, not omission. All right, just change that in the comments, and not the comments, but in the description below. So thank you for let's see here. No, thank you for that. I appreciate that, Lou, for picking that up. But anyhow, so like I said, I said this on Crossfire yesterday. I've been on the Xbox platform for 22 years. 22 years this fall. I was an Xbox Live beta tester. The original Xbox pulled me away from the PlayStation 2 and actually became my primary console of choice for the Xbox, the original Xbox generation or PS2 generation, for the Xbox 360 generation, and for half of last console generation before I switched back over to PlayStation 4 as my primary console of choice. Now, again, I Phil did the right thing, apologized for how Redfall released, as he should have. But I just I don't even know where to begin. I'm a loss of words. Clearly, I'm a loss of words here because I've never seen leadership from a gaming company come out, and maybe I should stop referring to Xbox as a gaming company, because Microsoft's primary business is not video games, right? Sony and Nintendo, their primary bread and butter are video games. That's what they do. But one of the things that really kind of stood out to me, actually a couple things that stood out to me in this interview, is when Phil says, I will say this, this might be disruptive as well. We do have a different vision. And he's talking about competing with Sony, Nintendo, because he did mention that, hey, I listened to all the pundits. They think that, making great video games is going to somehow change. And I'm paraphrasing, basically saying that the making great video games is somehow going to change the position they're in from being in third place, more or less. He says, I will say this might be disruptive as well. We do have a different vision. We want Xbox to be something that people who buy our console can feel like they're a member of, who are playing on PC, who are playing on xCloud. They feel like they're full members of our ecosystem. That's great, Phil. but I want quality S tier AAA games. That's what I want. That's what I want. That is what I want. That's what I want. Like this feeling. Oh, everyone's going to feel part of the ecosystem. That's fine. But people jump into ecosystems, gaming ecosystems. People buy consoles. People spend $500 on next generation consoles because they want new experiences. They want premium experiences. And I said this. I was listening to Dreamcast guy, and he was looking at the last 10 years for Game of the Year nominations. And the Xbox has not had a Game of the Year nomination in 10 years. 10 years. 2013 was the last time the Xbox had a exclusive that was in consideration for Game of the Year. Look, when I bought the original Xbox, I didn't buy the original Xbox to play Voodoo Vince, to play Fusion Frenzy. I didn't buy the original Xbox to play Voodoo Vince. Those things are great when they came along, but that's not the primary reason I went out and bought an original Xbox. I bought it for Halo Combat Evolved. I bought it for Dead or Alive 3. I bought it for Project Gotham Racing. Same thing with the Xbox 360. I didn't buy the Xbox 360 for Viva Pinata. I bought it for Perfect Dark. Bought it for Halo 3. Cal just said in the live chat, I bought the OG Xbox to play Halo Combat Evolved and Splinter Cell. So I get that they're trying to carve out a different path, and they should. Nintendo did. Nintendo's not competing in the console space the same way that Microsoft or Sony are, and that's evident by the hardware specs of the Nintendo Switch. But here's where I really disagree with Phil. And he says this, he says the idea, if we just focus on great games on our console somehow, we're going to win the console race, doesn't really lay into the reality of most people. Here's the thing, Phil. I don't care if you win the console race. What I care about is S tier AAA experiences. You guys marketed the Xbox Series X as the most powerful console. If you're not in the business of out-consoling Sony or out-consoling Nintendo, why are you making a machine that on paper is the most powerful gaming console on the market today? I don't care if you don't win the console generation. I don't buy an Xbox thinking, oh, I hope they win the console generation. No, I buy an Xbox because I want to experience first party content from them. I want to participate in their ecosystem because I have been for the last 22 years. So Phil goes on to say that like 90% of the people every year who walk into a retailer to buy a console are already a member of 3 ecosystems. Their digital library is there. He also mentioned that losing last console generation for them really hurt because that is the generation where people expanded and invested in their digital library. So what he's saying, it's hard to get those people back. But here's the thing. I don't agree with that either. And I'll give an example why in just a second. He says their digital library is there. This is the first generation where the big games they're playing were games that were available last gen. The continuity of generation to generation is so strong. Look, again, I don't care if Xbox wins the console generation. And if Phil, he talks about it, even talked about the event coming up in June and how they got a lot of stuff coming, and he's put eyes on Avowed and things are looking good, but he's like, none of that matters until the game and the controllers in the hands of the player. They're playing the game, they're smiling. So at the very least, if you want people to smile, you want people to feel good about being in that ecosystem, start putting out S tier AAA experiences. Be more consistent in the quality and the communication of the products that you're selling. I understand you're not going to maybe win the console generation, but if there's anyone if there's any proof that we could point to as that, hey, you can actually turn the ship around by actually releasing games, some really good games like this. Like I don't, this again, I'm going to read this quote. This idea, if we just focus on great games on our console, somehow we're going to win the console race. No, how about just making great games so that you don't lose customers, so that you could grow your base, because you will grow your base. There will be people out there who will pick up a Xbox Series console. I mean, Microsoft just shared numbers with us that 45% of those who have purchased the Xbox Series S are new to the Xbox ecosystem. Those are new customers. You have to imagine out of that 45% that maybe some of them are in existing ecosystems. Bender String says the Switch didn't take me away from the PS5, but I don't want to play games on it. That is the point. That's where I'm heading with this, Bender. Thank you. That Phil, even look, man, even if people aren't going, even if you don't win the console generation, at least you get people interested and you get people talking about the Xbox ecosystem, the way they used to talk about Halo Combat Evolved, the way that they talked about Forza when it first released, the way they talked about Gears of War when that first released. This sounded like a defeated mindset, a mindset of let me rephrase it. This came across to me as a thought process or mindset of defeat. And I don't understand that. We just want great games, Phil. That's all we want. A lot of us have been on the Xbox ecosystem for 20 plus years. We remember the bar that you guys set in releasing genre defining titles. We haven't seen that. And look, if there's any example of anyone being able to gain market share back, it's Nintendo. And Benji Sales had a great example of this in his video about his response to Phil Spencer in the Kind of Funny interview, where he used Nintendo as a case study. And I agree with him 110% because I was kind of thinking about, I was watching as I was watching the video, the interview, and Phil made that point. I was thinking about, well, Phil, what about Nintendo? And you look at how poorly the Wii U did compared to the Wii, where the Wii sold over 100 million consoles, and I mean, just was like a lightning in the bottle moment for Nintendo. And they come off selling 100 million plus Wiis to only selling about 13 million Wii U's and about 100 million or so software units, to releasing the Nintendo Switch and selling over 120 million units of the Switch and almost 1 billion units of software. Nintendo did that. How did Nintendo do that? They shored up their relationships with third-party developers, got great third-party content on the Switch, and then they also released really great games. Gamers, do you all remember what game released with the Nintendo Switch? The Legend of Zelda. That Legend of Zelda, wow. I think the software attach ratio for Zelda was like 100% or something like that at the release of the Nintendo Switch. Went on to be Game of the Year. Set the stage for Nintendo's success with the Nintendo Switch. And look at Nintendo. They haven't looked back since. So, Phil, the cure to a losing team, use a sports analogy, is winning. But if you're saying that the idea, if we just focus on great games on our console, somehow we're going to win the console race, doesn't really lay into the reality of most people. Phil, if you're not in the business of making great games, what are you in the business of doing then? I had this conversation with Game Logic today, and he answered the question. He said, making cheap games, lowering the barrier of entry. And I thought about that. I'm like, well, and I said to myself, so, well, that means that they are trying to just kind of offer this buffet of gaming, and there's certainly an addressable market for that, but that's not me. And that's probably not many of us here in the chat right now. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong if you want a cheap option to enjoy a variety of different software titles. They may not be AAA level. That's fine. If that's what you like, that's fine. Some people like going to CC's Pizza, but I would never compare to CC's Pizza. Like, I would never put it at the same level as something like a Matchbox, which is, if you're in the DMV, you know what Matchbox is. They make great brick oven pizza, but I would never compare CC's to Matchbox. I would never compare to that. What about the original Xbox? The original Xbox was Microsoft's first console. They had no mind share. They had nothing. But you know what put them on the face of them? You know what put them on the map? Halo. Combat Evolved, a video game, a genre-defining video game. And it was so successful for Microsoft that Halo became this cultural phenomena. Xbox became synonymous with pop culture. Remember the 360 generation? You remember um you remember when Halo 2 released in the event that that was. So while I don't expect him, my expectation of the Xbox as a fan of Xbox, as somebody who's a consumer in the Xbox ecosystem today, no, my expectation is not for them to beat Sony because that's a very tall order. Because PlayStation is doing better now than they did last console generation, and PlayStation hasn't hit their stride yet. By the way, according to B Money, they are going to have a very strong showing soon. And if you've been paying attention to Jim Ryan is in the big start of this generation basically said, "Look, we are going to let the games do the talking." And everything I've heard behind the scenes is that that in fact is going to happen. They were going to release new content. They're also going to go back and tug at the nostalgia string of gamers and bring back remakes of very popular franchises. And those games will be exclusive to PlayStation. But this idea that yes, you should be focusing on great games. And it's not because it's about winning the console war, it's about beating PlayStation. It's about giving what your consumers want. Like Phil mentions that, oh, I hear the pundits. You don't hear us because there's many of us in the community that own an Xbox. I keep saying like Cognito says, just one. I just want one. That's what we want. We want one. We want something. We want to be wowed again. We want that feeling that we had when you showed us Gears of War, when we saw Halo Combat Evolve for the first time. But look, if you want to be the CC's Pizza video games, that's your prerogative. That's fine. But that's not something that I'm interested in consuming and paying a monthly subscription fee for, because there's other publishers out there, third party. There's Nintendo and Sony that are providing more, that would be potentially providing more compelling software to me than what Xbox is doing. I hope that's not the case. I want to see a great Perfect Dark game from them. I want to see Avowed. They have stuff in the pipeline I'm interested in, but it's got to be good. I want those S tier experiences. When they talked about Xbox Game Pass and they said you get our first party games day and date, I said, holy moly. You're telling me I can get $60 games, all the $60 games I want, all the AAA games I want from you at $120? Sign me up. But just like when I didn't buy my original Xbox for Blinks of Time Sweeper or Voodoo Vince or Fusion Frenzy, I didn't get into Game Pass for games like Redfall, for games like Hi-Fi Rush, for games like Pentiment. The other thing that really, another quote here from Phil Spencer that kind of I didn't necessarily agree with was, I see a lot of pundits out there that kind of want to go back to the time we all had cartridges and disc, and every time a new generation was a clean slate, and you could switch the whole console share. That's just not the world we are in today. And again, I look, Phil, no one's saying that you're going to take over Sony. It's a tall task, but I'll point to Nintendo's success with the Switch and leave it at that. And at the very least, Phil, you could potentially get some people who are on the PlayStation platform, maybe interested in the Xbox ecosystem again. And you give them a taste of that Game Pass, and now they become a customer. Let me start the quote again. He says, I see a lot of pundits out there that kind of want to go back to the time we all had cartridges and disc, and every time a new generation was a clean slate, and you could switch the whole console share. That's just not the world that we are in today. There's no world where Starfield is an 11 out of 10 and people just start selling their PS5s. That's not going to happen. I heard this comment and I just shook my head. The point isn't that people are going to trade in their PlayStation 5s. That's highly unlikely. But the point is that somebody who owns a PlayStation 5, and Phil, you should want Starfield to be an 11 out of 10. All right, let me get Game Logic in here real quick. Game Logic, I'm going to DM you the link to the show on Twitter, your Twitter DM. Do that right now. All right, I just DM'd you. Just DM'd you there, Hamp. But look, I mean, it's not that people are going to go in and trade their PlayStation 5s. It's that you will get people interested in Game Pass. You need to grow Game Pass. I don't think just offering older games or smaller titles is enough. I could be wrong. And perhaps maybe when they get a stronger foothold in the mobile space. But if you're saying that Xbox, the console, is part of your ecosystem, part of your experience, that you value your consumers who are on the console platform, let me get Logic in here real quick. All right, Logic, can you hear me? I don't know if he can hear us yet. Let's see, maybe he's getting his mic set up. Logic, are you there? Are you there? Hello, testing. All right, so I guess we're gonna wait for Logic.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you now. Yep, there you go. What's up, Logic?
How much, man? How are you?
Good, man. Just man, this yeah. The 11 out of 10 thing is really kind of a sticking point for me. With his commentary on people aren't going to trade their PlayStation 5s. I think that's obvious. People probably won't trade their PlayStation 5s. But for me, it's like, look, the point is you want those 11 and 10 games. You want those games that spark that conversation, spark that interest in your ecosystem so they come join. So that maybe they go out and buy an Xbox now. Or they don't trade in their Xbox console and decide to unsubscribe from Game Pass like you did.
Whoa.
And you should announce that on Twitter, by the way.
I did.
I know.
And the tweet has gotten 13,000 views. I need
That's
to go back
amazing,
and check
isn't
it? Yeah, it's scary. Yeah.
No, but you're not the only one, though. We were on Crossfire yesterday, and Mag was sharing us a story with his wife. She's done with Xbox. She's a gamer. She's like, I'm done waiting. Unplugged her Xbox, did the factory reset, trading it in, got a PS5. So Hamp, a couple things in this interview that we talked about. We've talked about the show, the mismanagement of the production pipeline, which was evident here. Phil admitted to that as much. And there's some other things that I do want to talk about too, because you and I have been talking about these things behind the scenes. And it talks about, and this kind of correlates to or ties into the narrative of fire Phil Spencer. I'm out there. I'm not saying we should fire Phil Spencer, but I do think that there's an issue with managing what they're trying to do at scale. And I do want to talk about that in a sec. But Logic, I've been ranting on for the last 30 minutes or so about some of my thoughts on Phil's commentary. I want to get your thoughts, man, what you thought about what he said yesterday.
Yeah, so given how lathered up I see the chat is, this is probably going to be yet again another episode that people don't like me being here. I spent time this afternoon listening to the interview myself. I just didn't have time with work and everything yesterday. I think there are pieces of what you said that I agree with. There are pieces that I said that I still agree with, and then there's room for additional interpretation. I think in some of the things that I listened to firsthand. So let's start with what you mentioned, right, which is the management of the production pipeline. One of the things I tweeted was I just realized today, just thought about today, it's really weird to me that Pete Hines has gone cold, dark, and quiet. The last tweet from him was the day before Redfall dropped. There's been no tweet on his account since then. And I haven't seen any media coverage of anything. Now, I got one response from a person on Twitter who said, well, pretty much, as he should, right? That Phil took the fall for this, right? And maybe just told Pete, lay low, continue to be the good guy. I'll take all the heat. But I thought that was kind of strange. I agree with you, right? The thing about the 11 and 10, you and I talked today. I talked about pride of workmanship, in that there should be an inherent drive, as you would have in kind of any team, any sports team, to use that analogy. To, it's definitely fine. Again, I'll stick with the sports team analogies. Many sports teams say we're not measuring ourselves, right, by what that other team is doing, but there's still a competitive drive to win the championship, to be the best. And so the 11 of 10 didn't fully resonate with me. Now, what you talked about, I think that I heard as I was just coming on, part of my new interpretation is goes a step further than what you and I talked about, right? Which is that think of the last generation, as he said, everybody built their digital library. Think of these boxes like smartphones. And so the people who left the Xbox ecosystem last generation and went and bought a PlayStation and have now bought 10, 15, 20, 25, right, digital games, subscribe to PlayStation Plus Premium, whatever. Those people aren't abandoning that investment, right? They're not coming back. They've achieved escape velocity. And so, I don't think he said it best, but, what he says is absolutely true. Like, no matter how good Starfield is, those people are likely not coming back. Like you said, there's some outside baseball there where, somebody might buy a Series S, or, the 20% of the market or whatever that owns both consoles, might come back. But, even then still, are they going to come back for one title, or does it take a stronger draw than that to even bring them back? So I think there's a tale of kind of modernization and transformation in here. About some of the messaging. Some of the things that we find fault with, I think, are absolutely applicable right now. And I've said they're applicable for the entirety of this generation. I don't think that there's any way that, things are going to change. The question is, do they change further down the road? And is that Microsoft's strategy to keep, pumping money into this thing until they think they're going to hit some transformational tip over point, and what does that look like? BRAP, you still there?
Oh, I was muted. I was talking to you. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. No, thank you for saying BRAP. Are you there? Because I would have kept talking into a muted mic. What was I saying, Game Logic, before I realized I was muted? So we've talked about the management of the production pipeline and the fact, look, they've made a lot of acquisitions and they're getting ready. They're trying to acquire ABK. I don't think that deal's going to go through, Logic. I think I'd say Phil looked like a tired man yesterday. I think it's been a rough 2 weeks for Microsoft, for Xbox, but they're trying to do something at scale. And you brought up this point, and it's because we were talking about the whole Phil Spencer should be fired narrative that's going around. And we were saying, and you brought up a great point that, hey, it's not that they can't do this work. Like Matt Booty's has had success in the gaming industry. Has had some success in the industry. And one of my criticisms about Phil's commentary yesterday was when he says, look, maybe we didn't engage Austin Arcane soon enough. And I'm like, what do you mean it's soon enough? Like, you've been in the industry 20 plus years. You know how the sausage is made. Like, I don't understand how that happens. And then you also had a similar experience with mismanagement with one of your tentpole franchises in Halo Infinite a couple years ago. So this isn't like anything new. This is kind of a reoccurring problem. Why is this still happening? I thought you brought up a great point, Logic, was that maybe they just don't know how to manage a set. And correct me if I'm not quoting you correctly here, but you said something to the effect that maybe they just don't have experience at managing something at this scale.
Yeah, exactly, and maybe I can't even remember. I don't think I drove my nail home all the way. I started off talking about what you had mentioned about production pipeline quality management. Yeah, I mean, some of the things that I heard, there are pieces of what I heard now in the interview that that the engineering side of me resonates with, and I'll talk about those a little later. But from the process perspective, because that's what I spent a large part of my graduate work in, and what some of my graduate specialties are in. The lack of oversight and governance, the notion that there was not a trust but verify there wasn't even a wedge of that in the culture. I told some of the Xbox fans on Twitter today. I mean, this isn't just an oops moment. That's a train wreck. Like you don't, and I mean, and this is pertinent to what you were saying about, it's not just managing it at scale, but it's also the fact that, I'll talk about it a little bit later. The notion that Xbox is trying to make this transformative course change about how games are built and engineer them for an almost entirely different type of gaming customer, but yet they're still applying 2005, 2010 management and leadership approaches to it. That's a mismatch and is problematic. As I've also said about, they're using that old format of launches and deliveries, but they have an entirely different business model, right? In terms of Game Pass and subscriptions, which is a machine that just consistently, deterministically needs to be fed, right? So you can't have misses, right? Because misses generate churn, and churn is what prevents that business from ever becoming a going concern that actually does the thing that you're trying to do, which is make it a recession resilient backup play when your enterprise goes south and your IT goes south, because businesses aren't, because businesses, hold off on IT upgrades and things of that nature. You have to change the production pipeline to match your business model. And by the same token here, you have to institute, more disciplined matters of oversight and programmatics, right? In order to prevent things like this from being a surprise, which apparently they were to Xbox.
I gotta be honest with you too, Logic. And I said this to you earlier today. The issue I had with Phil, it was very defeatist. Like this wasn't like a winning like a conversation that I would expect from someone who's like, yeah, I know we effed up, but you know what, come hell high water, we're going to give you some good games. We are committed to you. Not this whole, this is how it works, and 90% of the people already in ecosystems are going to go to the store and they're going to see the 11 out of 10 game. They're not going to trade their PlayStation 5 like that. That's kind of like the woe is me. And I thought about this more today. Like, was he speaking to the EU? Is he trying to make his case? Like, this is why we need ABK, because we can't compete, because people aren't going to trade their PlayStation 5s in. It's almost like no matter what we do, we can't do anything right. That's what resonated with me when I went back and I listened to his commentary again today.
Well,
and it's like,
yeah,
and I said this on Crossfire. Like Phil, I don't care whether or not you sell more consoles than PlayStation. Because when I bought the original Xbox, you guys were new, the new player. People were saying there's no way. People were anticipating that the original Xbox would probably fail because Microsoft didn't have any, real inroads, in console gaming the way Nintendo did. They're going up against two behemoths in the console industry. Sega had just exited stage, and the consoles and with the Dreamcast. And what do? The first generation, they outsold Nintendo, but they did that through content. So I'm still kind of like, I'm like, Phil, like I get that you're trying to create this ecosystem where people feel good about being in the ecosystem, whether you're on console or PC, but or cloud. But at the end of the day, you're still selling a $500 box, and you marketed that box as the most powerful console in the world. So if you're saying you can't out console Sony or you can't out console Nintendo, why even bother making that box in the first place? And I've gotten to the point, Logic, where I'm kind of thinking about, do I want to continue this ecosystem now?
Well, I think so I think the realization you have to come to is that
I want to eat at Cece's Pizza.
Well, that box isn't made for you, and you're not the Xbox customer, and that's
true,
and that's gonna be right, the hard tack that people are gonna have a hard time swallowing.
So let me ask you something, Logic. That's going to be. Do you think that's going to be a lot of people? I think
it is going to be a lot of people. It's going to be. I mean, it's some wedge of the 50 million people that they retained and brought over from last generation, right? Because the horse ain't going to get there. I mean, I've talked on this show. I talked about it on Twitter today, right? I mean, there's two sets of calculations that I'm looking at now. One set of calculations says that the ship's not going to be righted on the production pipeline until 2025. That is the earliest point that you get to when you are reliably outputting 4 to 6 AAA, first party, high quality, S tier, A tier games per year. Now, the one huge problem when I ran those calculations last year is those calculations were inclusive of Activision Blizzard. That deal doesn't go through, and he talked about in the interview today that ATVI was an accelerant to their plans. Activision Blizzard, they're not the whole plan. All the eggs aren't in the basket, which says to me that there's a backup plan and there's a contingency plan. But he talked about them being an accelerant, which means that plan unfolding is going to take longer. And so in order to realize the strategy now, and it's a different strategy than I've talked about in the past, I don't believe that will happen before the end of this generation. So you're not just so the decision people need to come to, who are staying on Xbox, is you haven't just made a $500 investment. You're also going to need to make an additional investment to start off next generation as well before this whole thing, right, kind of comes full circle and you get the transformation of game design and implementation and deployment that it's really going to take to play this game that Spencer's talking about that is definitively different than what Sony and Nintendo are doing.
It's interesting, Logic. You brought up like maybe the box isn't for you. I hit that point. I hit that point with Nintendo at one point in my gaming life.
Well, yeah. I mean,
this is probably where I'm at with Xbox right now. I'm willing to bet that this is probably where a lot of people are at with Xbox right now, where they're kind of like, does it make sense for me to stay given the course that they're going? Because again, this to me what he said didn't really instill any confidence in me that we're going to get those S tier experiences, which again, I said this on Crossfire last night when I bought look, there's nothing wrong with Hi-Fi Rush and games like Pentiment. Those are great to have in your portfolio, but those can't be the only good games that you're putting out. And like when I bought the original Xbox, I didn't buy the original Xbox for Fusion Frenzy, even though I enjoyed Fusion Frenzy, it was fun. But I didn't buy it just for Voodoo Vince. I didn't go out and buy an OG Xbox because I was like, oh my God, look, Blink's the Time Sweeper. It's amazing. It's a cat in the vacuum. Got to go out and buy that game day one. No. I didn't go buy it for, what is it, Phantom Dust? I think that was one of the OG Xbox games. I bought it because Brute Force, that trailer, even though that wasn't a good game, that trailer was amazing though. Halo Combat Evolved, but nothing that he. Again, Logic. It just came off to me like this defeatist mentality. And then again, I wonder how much of that was scripted to speak to the EU, because that's the next battle now for this merger is the EU, which I think the EU is probably going to block this deal. Because he's interested. He did mention the deals that Nintendo and Sony make. He mentioned that in this interview, that they make these deals kind of behind the scenes, and he's like, oh, but then that's on us too. So, but you know what? I just, yeah, the state of Xbox just doesn't look rosy to me right now. And, as we talk about this more Game Logic here live, and I'm thinking about because I'm not the only gamer in my house now. My kids play video games, and I'm thinking, I pay X amount of dollars for Game Pass, and I've only kept Game Pass really in hopes of them releasing good games, or maybe we're getting some third-party games like Wulong. But a lot of the games they put into the Game Pass subscription service aren't really games that I want to play, or games that I've already played, because they're older games. And I just don't have the time or interest, because there's other newer games that are coming out that I want to play on my PC, that I want to play on my PlayStation 5. Tears of the Kingdom comes out next week. I'm going to be playing that on my Nintendo Switch OLED. And as I'm thinking about my use case for the Xbox now, Hamp, I'm thinking I might be done after this. After my subscription runs out, I may just be done, because I think I've already paid for this year. Because, for the longest time, I've been saying on BRAP, oh yeah, my kids use Game Pass, and it's kind of been one of the big motivators for me to keep Game Pass. But PlayStation has the PlayStation Plus. And that console is probably a better one-stop shop for me and my family, because I can get the games that I want, the experiences I want, and my kids can also not have to worry about buying games for my kids. My kids can go on to PlayStation Plus and play other games that they would enjoy.
Yeah. So in 1999, 2003, 2004, did you have a flip phone?
I did.
So when did you buy an iPhone?
I did not get an iPhone until 2010.
Okay.
Because I had a flip phone, and then I moved on to BlackBerry. Because remember, I had a keyboard.
Okay. When did you buy your BlackBerry? Ish.
2005.
Okay.
So I was in the BlackBerry ecosystem for about 5 years.
Gotcha. And when you bought your iPhone, did you buy apps?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess from there you went from iPhone to Android at some point?
Yeah, because Android is just a better device, but that's another conversation.
Okay. Have you ever gone back and bought a flip phone?
No.
Okay. So one scenario in this is that if Xbox,
it's a trick question, but go ahead.
if Xbox,
hey, no more Walmart slander, by the way. Go ahead.
So like I said, if Xbox, if the box isn't for you, and I mean, and clearly I've stated, with my own actions that the box isn't for me, and the box isn't for, a large number of the current type of customer that is a gamer. And if what Xbox is building is for a different type of customer, then one way this scenario plays out is if those customers are the new types of gamers, and we're all still buying flip phones.
I don't like being compared to a flip phone consumer. Logic. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
So some of the things that I heard.
I see what you're saying though. Like you're saying, there's a new consumer out there, and I get that they're building for a different market,
right? I mean, this is why I say, people are going to have to make choices. I mean, I would talk to you about the Nintendo Wii analogy, right, that I drew earlier today. Nintendo Wii sold 13.6 million units, right, in lifetime sales. for 5 years, that community, those people went into a crater of a bathtub, right? Living in despair, right? Broken promises given to them all over the 5 years, E3 after E3, abandonment of the platform by the big third-party publishers. Those publishers refusing to put, even when they did stay, refusing to put their marquee games on the Wii U, which sounds an awful lot like what Square Enix is doing now, right? And then 2017, the Nintendo Switch comes out. Now they've sold upwards of 122 million, 130 million maybe units, right? And the world has returned. Now, a lot of people are going to pom-pom that as a good story, right? But the problem is that if you were a Nintendo person in 2012 and ish didn't get right till 2017, I don't know that that's totally a good news story for everyone's mentality, right?
Well, it's not good for the people that stuck around.
Well, right, who are going through a lot of the same things that the Xbox people are going through right now, right? Society constantly, taking a piss in their eye, asking them what's wrong with them, why are they so broken, why are they staying on the platform, right? That whole community you can see is being psychologically tortured into becoming the most toxic. Right, gaming community on the planet. Because they allow themselves to be teased by the bully.
Though.
Yeah,
I get it. And then they follow a bunch of xenophobes and like I won't mention that catfish's name, but yeah,
right. And so eventually the world comes back, right? And if you look at the Nintendo Switch again, going back to my flip phone analogy, you could say that for some parts of the gaming addressable market, those people are playing on a handset that does something different, right? While the rest of us are, still making tools out of iron and trying to create fire by, flinting rocks together.
Okay, first, Logic, I disagree with that. I'll tell you why. Because you and I own high-end PCs, sir. We are not flip phone owners. We're not.
I'm keeping it to the console. You can't pull PCs into the mix, man.
Of course I can.
Look, there's Lamborghinis. Right.
We are the high end consumer is my point. That's why I don't like the flip phone thing. Really doesn't sit well with me, by the way.
Don't be mad because you had a flip phone, man.
Look, I flip phones were great back then.
I had a little Sony flip phone that was built like the Dick Tracy phone with like the little flip down handlebar like mouthpiece. I get it, man. I was right there with you.
Remember the Nokia phone from
I do
from the Matrix?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I meant to tell you the other day, I had the little Morpheus glasses too.
Nice.
But what I'm saying is that as I went back and listened to his video, to his interview firsthand, the additional pieces that I heard were when he talks about, we can't build the same kind of games that Sony and Nintendo do. What I hear in the whole ATVI meeting, so and then he talked about, the Xbox console when he was asked, hey, Xbox, is the console still your priority? And he talked about, yes, it's a priority, but that, and now I'm paraphrasing, but what he articulated was that group of citizens is not are not the sole demographic citizen on our island, right? What he talked about is that what they need to do, what Xbox needs to do, what Microsoft needs to do is they need to create gaming experiences that people access. And he did this whole thing, which I know people have heard before, the multiple devices, right? Mobile, cloud, PC. And he talked about people being able to access those experiences and those people on Xbox to be able to game in a social environment and all of those people having the same experience. That's not feasible today. And that's why I say it's not, we're not talking about modernization. We're talking about transformation. Those types of games, in order to enable that reality, have to be engineered and architected in significantly different ways than traditional games are built today. And they're not just the game. They are infrastructure, platforms, APIs. There's a lot of scaffolding that has to go to realize that vision. What I heard today is that that's what they're building. And then that's what I get to, that ain't going to be built in this generation.
No,
right?
It's not.
You're going to get some onesie, twosie, like one-offs. The Xbox people are going to...
This is 2023, though.
Yeah.
And I understand they're building those things. And I think Sony is to an extent. But I don't think Sony's not going to flip the switch right away.
Sony and this is, and I wouldn't entirely articulate it that way, but I am going to do it in this one instance just to get the point across. Sony doesn't have the ability to stomach abandoning an entire customer demographic to start building an entirely new bridge, but Microsoft can. Microsoft can allow the Xbox customer base to erode to a significant degree, and not show as much care and feeding for the console. I mean, and essentially they are, right? And this is my view of the world is that things are finite, right? There's nothing that goes to infinity when you talk about resource management, right? And so in order to but in terms of resource management, right, everything's got to be finite.
Thirst trapping at Walmart. But
so in order to build out a bridge and a fabric that extends to people on PC, mobile, and cloud, you cannot, by definition, consume and utilize the same resources and direct them with the same amount of energy that you would have normally done to only appeal to one customer base, because now you're trying to appeal to 4. And so the people who are on Xbox and the people who stay on Xbox, you're essentially subsidizing the MAU to allow Xbox to get to this larger idea of a gaming citizenship than it currently has.
yeah. Well, the issue though I have though is that it's 2023, and I don't disagree with your points, but it's 2023. They're selling a $500 box though.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Like I said, people are going to have to make choices.
Yeah, but no, I mean, and I'm going to have to make that choice. Let me. So I do have a hard stop here, Game Logic, and I do want to continue this conversation. We may have to do another BRAP brand if you're available this weekend, because you are bringing up some great points, and I think it is something we should talk about, because I think there's something to be said about the direction they're going and kind of carving their own path. But let me get the super chat real quick before we wrap up the show. I've got Eater79 with the $5 super chat. He says, here is Kazurai in third place in 2009 after Record Losses said they'd be the industry leader. Google, Sony ignores struggling PS3. Thank you for that $5 super chat. But, Logic, I mean, I get what you're saying. I mean, it's a fair point. I think what I'm having a hard time stomaching is the flip phone analogy, because in the Walmart comments from early in the
yeah, the part you know what you're really having a hard time stomaching is that you still have Xboxes in your house while I have $425 in my pocket. I've only given Microsoft $75 to subsidize them building their future. You're still letting them hold your money.
That. Oh my God! Come on, man! Just to pour salt on the wound, Jeez. You're not wrong.
Just like my Nintendo thing.
Three Xboxes in the house, by the way.
Yeah, just like my Nintendo thing. Look, I had a Nintendo Wii. I got rid of it before the generation was over, when I wasn't getting anything out of it. And I sat on the side of the ring while they pranced around doing their Wii U thing. And I said, not for me. And then, but when the Nintendo Switch came back, I was there day one. Right? And those are the types of choices people can make.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. But look, I definitely want to continue this conversation, Logic. I don't know if maybe another BRAP rant this weekend, or maybe we pick this up next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern time for our regular scheduled BRAP. But I definitely want to talk about this, because that's what you brought up is a fair point, because there is another piece to this conversation that wasn't really fleshed out in this interview that you brought up here. I think it's a great topic to discuss. So, but Logic, hey, thanks for jumping in. I know I asked you earlier if you could jump in, and really appreciate your time as always. And what a big shout out to everyone in the live chat. Please, we got like 200 something people who are watching. Smash that like button. Smash the like button. And if you're new, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. So, yeah, I don't know, Game Logic, if you want to let everyone know where they can find you, if you want to be followed. If not, I understand.
I don't, but I do want to ask one question. I want to get something
go ahead.
out in the air, clearly on the table, because I'm an open and transparent person, and just ask something straight up. Now, Bender of Strings, maybe I don't have your name right from the comments, but I would swear you were the person in the comments 2 episodes ago who was saying less Game Logic. And now you're laughing, saying that was savage. So here, look, man, this is all I want to know. I just want you to be straight with me. Do you want me here, or do you not want me here? Do you only want me here when you think I'm defending Xbox? or what? I don't really care what the answer is. I just want to know, because I don't want to have the split personality approach. Either you're a friend or an enemy. Let's get it on the table and get it straight.
Challenge. All right. Look, also give me a follow on the Twitters at @BRAP_podcast as well. But yeah, everyone have a great rest of the weekend. Happy Cinco de Mayo, by the way. Go out and have a margarita. I know I will be later on this evening. So, but yeah, Game Logic, I definitely want to continue this conversation. You brought up some really great points, even though I don't agree with the flip phone analogy. As I look at my $3,000 PC rig, and I'll just leave it at that. But I'll say this. If you're not playing on PC, you should be playing on PC. It's the best place to play video games. So on that note, thank you everyone for watching. What'd you say, Logic?
Nope, very true. Very true.
Yeah, I'm not lying, right? It's the best place to play video games.
Get yourself a PC. It's a better investment right now than an Xbox.
I would agree with you 110% right now. I would, yeah. And maybe that's the route for me. Maybe my it's probably going to be the route for me, actually. Sell my Series X consoles, dabble in the Xbox ecosystem every once in a while through PC. There you go. For whenever maybe they release those exclusives I want to play. Problem solved. All right, everyone. Thank you for watching the show. Please hit that like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. Bender Streak says, no, we're cool, Game Logic. There you go.
All right. Well, there you go. I will expect no further slander in the comments.
No slander, yeah. Someone said super. Did I miss a super chat?
I don't know. I scrolled back up when she said that. Or he or she said that. I don't see one. You mentioned the one from Rice Eater. I didn't see another one, at least in my feed.
I'm scrolling up here. I don't think I see one. Yeah, I don't see another super chat here. Yeah, I just scrolled. I don't see another super chat. Yeah, Ryan Landis says there was just one. Hey Ryan, are you a mod on the channel? You're a mod, right? Let me see if Ryan Landis is a mod. Let me see here real quick.
Yeah, and while he's doing that,
Ryan Landis, he's a mod. Yeah. No, go ahead, man. You're good. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, Paul is saying, what did he say? PC is part of the Xbox ecosystem, though. And Paul, I mean, we'll go to it in more detail, but one of the things is it's not in its entirety, right? It's one launcher, right, amongst a half dozen to a dozen that any PC gamer can choose. So I think we were talking about it on the last thing. Somebody threw that at me as an accusation. I know you're not mentioning it as an accusation because I know you show up to E2KG, but me, even if I buy an Xbox game, right? Me buying an Xbox game through Steam doesn't do the same for Xbox as me being a Game Pass subscriber or buying it right from the Xbox store, from the Microsoft store.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're gonna head out. Everyone, thank you again for watching the stream. Really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time, and have a great weekend. Happy Cinco de Mayo.